That's one of the gifts that Jung gave us. He also said, understand that the other non-rational function is intuition. How many of us, just out of curiosity, have intuition working in our lives? We better. And, he said the intuition is that still small voice that's connected to our personal unconscious, through the collective unconscious, to the conscious mind. Now, I personally think it's a good idea to set aside some time every day for a spiritual practice and say, any messages for me, I'm listening. I tend to do it 2 or 3 times a day because I don't want to miss anything. So I suggest to you that you do that and that you have this dialogue with all the parts of yourself. In astrology, we have mutable, cardinal, and fixed energy, don't we? What does that mean? It means that if you're a cardinal type, you have energy in the signs that are on the spoke of the wheel, and that's where it moves. So the action people are born that way. Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn are the action people, and that is their tendency and their need. Fixed signs support the cardinal. Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, those are the people that I call the crockpots, because they always are keeping their energy plugged in, but at a lower temperature so that things can congeal and distill. The people that are mutable, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, have the temperament of moving. They're the curiosity seekers. They're the seekers of experience. They're the people that jump. So we know that all of this has a place in the astrological as well as in the Jungian archetypes. The archetypes of Puer and Senex are very strong energy fields for Jung. And Puer is, of course, the child. Senex is the wise person. So, we start with as children and we move to the wisdom channel. That's where we're going. And I'm sure you're going to talk some about that. How to heal the wounds and how to grow past the wounds in our lives. I think it's important for me to get a sense at this point of what your curiosity and what your interest is for me to go on. Haven't we spent about 35 minutes now?
32.
Okay, pretty close. So if y'all would like to do some question or commenting, let's go ahead with that, because I could go anywhere with this material. Yes, Ginger.
Would you repeat what you said, that we, instead of being a feeling society, we turned into a what society?
Sensation. Let's talk about the difference between feeling and sensation. Feeling slows us down so that we can resonate with what is. We can only deal with feeling if we've dealt with our own pain. If we use our pain as a catalyst to action instead of to wellness, then we have to have bigger and bigger experiences. We have to have more and more, gadgeting, more and more, bigger and more violent, bigger, more. We have to be constantly developing an attachment to what's out there, and it's about external validation rather than inner reality and inner comfort.
And people are medicating this.
Yes, medicating the pain with alcohol, with drugs, with sex, with activity, with, pick something. And so it's this busy world instead of this quieter, saner, more balanced world. So that's where we are now. And of course, as we all know, the pendulum always swings in another way. And so once it's reached critical mass, it'll crash and burn, which I think you're already seeing, like in the football situation with the brain injuries. So I think that's one of the aspects that you see. So, that's where we're headed if we're in the mainstream. But if you're not dealing with social conformity and you're dealing with individual self, you're probably not participating in that. So that's one of the things that I think. Are you interested at all in gender and the brain? Do you have any interest in that? Because that to me is one of the more fascinating topics. When I was in graduate school, my professor Dave Malin was one of the first people to do brain scans. And he was interested in the effect of drugs and alcohol on the brain, so we got to see that. But shortly thereafter, we got to see the difference in the male and female brain. And the brain has 2 halves, and it's joined by what's called a corpus callosum, which I think is just like a blotter, or it's a connecting circuitry. And we know that in males, one side lights up at a time. We know that in females, both sides light up at the same time and they talk to each other, which is why women have a longer speech pattern than males often do, and why they like to talk to each other. And they get the advantage of talking things through and usually understanding and feeling, whereas men are kind of locked up in that prison of their one half of the brain. And so we have real specific tasks that men are good at that women find challenging, and we also find tasks that women are better at because of the fact that their brain is firing differently. You know, Daniel Amen, who's done so much wonderful work on the brain, he says that when you see a man come home from work and turn on the clicker, it's because his brain is tired and he's trying to reactivate it. And so I think it's important for us to understand that these are biological differences, neurological differences in us, and that's why, you know, the craziness in the 60s and 70s and 80s, which is I can be anything I want and we're not, there's no difference in us, has been totally refuted. So I think that's an important thing to know about. And, you know, astrologically, what do we have? We have receptive, and we have yin and yang in our astrological signs and in the planets. So if it's true in astrology, wouldn't it be true in human beings? Probably so. What other kinds of questions do you have about Jungian psychology as it applies to astrology, or just anything else? Kim?
I was fascinated by what you said about the shadow. I've never heard that the shadow is in fact
something we chose not to grow because of our own wounds. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about any relationship to the seventh house?
Well, I'm not sure, yeah, because the seventh house is the open enemies in the old system, so I think the seventh house in astrology is the shadow.
Traditionally, yeah.
Yeah, but I also think it's the 12th house, and I think it's wherever Neptune is, because we can't see it clearly. And one of the real interesting psychological concepts that's also based in the body is the idea that we all have a lacuna or a blind spot in our visual field. Daniel Goleman wrote I thought, an amazing book. After he did Emotional Intelligence, he wrote a book called Vital Lies, Simple Truths, The Psychology of Self-Deception. I couldn't wait to read that.